Welcome back, everyone. So, today we'll be dealing with chapter 4 of History Class 6. And yeah, well, it's a very small chapter. There isn't a lot of things to be dealing with in detail in this chapter. So, let's try to finish it off as quickly as possible. I keep saying this every time, but there's just so many details inside when we study this that I just can't ignore and just move on with the chapter, right? So, wherever I feel there are things which are quite important and which should be repeated, I can't help it, I'll have to do that. Anyway, so let's begin. Mary in the library. As the bell rang, the teacher asked the students to follow him because they were going to the library for the first time. When Mary stepped inside, she found that the library was much larger than their classroom, and there were so many shelves, all full of books. In one corner was a cupboard filled with large old volumes. Seeing her trying to open the cupboard, the teacher said, "That cupboard has very special books on different religions. Did you know that we have a set of Vedas?" "What are the Vedas?" Mary wondered. "Let us find out." So, the way I think this book is progressing is that it is introducing us to the different stages, right? So, we began with the old Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic periods, and then we came to hunters and gatherers, and then we took a look into the Indus Valley civilization, and now here we are progressing towards the Vedic period. I think it's just the way the book is progressing, introducing us to all of these different periods, and maybe in the coming classes we'll find these things that we are studying here in much more detail is what I am expecting. I mean, I had come through these phases, but I just don't realize that we actually studied these things. It's been so long. Yeah, anyway, so let's just begin with the chapter. One of the oldest books in the world. You may have heard about the Vedas. There are four of them: Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharvaveda. Rigved, Samved, Yajurved, and Atharvaved. These are the three. These are the four different Vedas that are there. Oldest one is the Rigved. Oh my God. Yeah, well, the oldest one is the Rigved. Why it wouldn't just let me? Why can't it just simply? Why can't this be an easy thing? Really? How? How? Right, okay, anyway. We have better tools. So Rig Veda is the oldest one, and it was composed, not written. It was composed 3,500 years ago. This is quite an important thing to note that yes, it was not written. It was composed 3,500 years ago, and it is the oldest Ved. Okay? The Rig Veda includes more than 1,000 hymns called suktas, or it means well said. So Rig Veda has more than 1,000 hymns, which which are called sukta, or it means well said. So these hymns are in the praise of various gods and goddesses. So it's in the praise of various gods and goddesses. Prominent of these gods and goddesses are Agni, who is the god of fire, Indra, who is the god of war, and we have Soma, which is a plant. Agni, god of fire, Indra, warrior god, and Soma, which is a plant from which a special drink was made. It's like alcohol, is what I know, but I could be wrong. So let's just check it out here. Soma. Yeah, and what you would typically expect. Okay, so my drink. I was about to say what you typically expect out of Bing, because it never really lands on the thing that you'd want to know what you are wanting to know about. Anyway, so in the Vedic tradition, Soma is a ritual drink of importance among the early Vedic Indo-Aryan. Rigveda mentions it, particularly in Soma Mandala. Gita mentions the drink. It is equivalent to the Iranian Hauma. I don't know. Etymology. Drinking Soma produces immortality. Oh, okay. Indra, Agni are portrayed as consuming Soma in copious amounts. In the Vedic ideology, Indra drank large amounts of Soma while fighting the serpent demon Vritra. Okay. Consumption of Soma by human beings is well attested in Vedic ritual. Blah 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 blah. A lot of things about Soma. So it kind of gives power. It kind of makes a person very strong, is what I can gather from this. Anyway, so we have Agni, we have Indra, and a Soma, which is a plant from which a special drink is made. It's they say that it's like Amrit. What I think it's like a tonic or something which you drink and you get very powerful. So yeah, Agni and Indra used to drink a lot of Soma, and they get a lot of power. Anyway, so these hymns were composed by sages. There's the next detail that these people deliver to us. Composed by sages. How does pink look? Not bad, yes. Ugly. Oh, I might hurt a lot of people's sentiments here. Okay, fine for the people who like pink. Composed by sages. It was composed by sages and it was taught by the priest to the students. It was recited and then people would memorize it bit by bit, each syllable, word, and sentence bit by bit with great care. Most of the hymns were composed, taught, and learned by men, but there are a few of these compositions that were written by women as well. The Rig Veda is in Old or Vedic Sanskrit. ठीक है. So it was written in Old or Vedic Sanskrit. It was not written in the Sanskrit that we had studied or we study in our schools these days. That isn't the Sanskrit that was used. It was the old or Vedic Sanskrit in which the Rig Veda was written. Right, Sanskrit and other languages. Now this is we can go into it, but they have basically divided. They have classified how languages fall in different families here. So we have an Indo-European family. We have a. I'm jumping here. I'm not reading it. It's quite a tedious thing. That's why I think it's good if we just jump ahead and find out. We have the Tibeto-Burmese family. We'll read about it anyway. Okay, so we have a Tibeto-Burman family. We have a Dravidian family, and finally we have an Austro-Asiatic family. So they have divided. They have classified the various languages near and around our places into four different families. We have an Indo-European family group. We have a Tibeto-Burmese family group. We have Dravidian family group, and we have an Austro-Asiatic family. I'll tell you the easier ones first. Dravidian family, South India, all of it. We have Malayalam, Telugu, Kannada, and Tamil falling into the Dravidian system. Okay, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam fall into the Dravidian family. Then, if you talk about the Tibeto-Burman family, go to the northeast, and all of the states there in northeast have the Tibeto-Burman family, and the central parts of India. We have Jharkhand and the central parts of India have or fall under the Austroasiatic family. Now, what remains? We have except for the fact that Assam comes in a northeastern state, and Assamese should have been a part of the Tibeto-Burman family, but it is not. Okay, so except for Assam, all the other states we have Gujarat, so Gujarati, Assamese, Hindi, Kashmiri, and Sindh. There are some parts which I don't know where it falls, like areas especially towards the west of India. We have Gujarat obviously, but Rajasthan and all of these regions, so that is not covered here. So I'm pretty sure I'd expect it to fall under the Indo-European family, but I could be wrong. So keeping that thing in mind, let's mark these out as well. So we have Assamese, Gujarati, Hindi, Kashmiri, and Sindhi falling in the Indo European system. Indo European family, not system, Indo European family. So these fall under the Indo European family. And other than these, also, these are the Indian languages that fall under the Indo European system. But other than this, also, we have European languages such as English, French, German, Greek, Italian, and Spanish that also belong to this family. I mean, it's quite an obvious thing, right? Indo-European, so Indian and European blend of the things. That's it. That kind of thing. Not really a hard thing to get together with. Okay. Now, the reason why they have placed our Indian languages and these European languages together in one particular family is because there are very many words, or the use of the grammar is such that it resembles each other. It resembles a lot of similarity. That's the reason why they have placed it together. They have given the example of matra, mother, ma. Okay, no, but in my opinion, I don't think this really is a very good depiction of a good example. I mean, mother is probably like the language, like the word used, mother, matra, ma, is pretty much the same all throughout. In almost all of the languages, we have this um, way. It's very similar. So I don't know if the idea of using this as an example really gives us a clarity or not. So it's just my opinion. Like, yeah, it's just what I think. I think there could have been better examples here to uh, properly reason out why they have placed something in the Indo-European language and why they had placed the others in other families like Tibeto-Burman, Dravidian, and Austroasiatic families. Anyway, so let's move on. Now, what is this? List the languages you have heard about and try and identify the families to which they belong. I think I'll not be doing that now. You have heard. Oh no, come on, man. I mean, let's just move on. Yes, let's just leave that question for a while and finish the chapter. The books we use are written and printed. The Rig Veda was yeah. So they're just trying to imply here that Rig Veda was not written; it was recited and it was heard rather than read. Rather than read. Okay. Yeah, it wasn't written in the first place. Yes. So if it's not written, then it was yeah, it was told, it was spoken, and it was heard, and then it was recited. It was not written anywhere so that it could be read. It was it was heard and it was recited. Anyway, so it was written down several centuries after it was composed, and it was printed less than 200 years ago. So many centuries after it was first composed, it was, yeah, many centuries after it was first composed, it was written down, and it got printed only 200 years ago. So that's what we can say about the Rig Veda. It was composed 3,500 years ago, yes? If I'm not wrong, we just, yeah, 3,500 years ago. 3,500 years ago, composed 3,500 years ago, and written down many centuries later and printed 200 years ago, right? So, how historians study the Rig Veda? Historians, like archaeologists, find out about the past, but in addition to material remains, they examine written sources as well. Let us see how they study the Rig Veda. Some of the hymns in the Rig Veda are in the form of dialogues. This is part of one such hymn, a dialogue between a sage named Vishwamitra and two rivers, Beas, Beas, and Satluj, that were worshipped as goddesses. So, Beas, am I pronouncing it correct? Is it Bees, Beas, Bias? Anyway, so I'll just say Beas. Beas and Satluj were worshipped as goddesses. Okay. And Vishwamitra is having a word with these two rivers who were worshipped as goddesses. Find these rivers on the map in the topmost part. It's a tributary of Indus River. So it goes. We can, yeah. I mean, I've done that in the earlier chapters. So we can always refer back to the old video and find out where it is. I have an idea where it is. It is on the top western side, northwestern side. Yeah, it's there somewhere. I don't exactly remember which tributary was Beas and which tributary was Satluj. I know that there are six. There are six in which one was Saraswati, but it doesn't exist anymore. One was Indus itself, Beas, Satluj, Chenab, Jhelum. These are there, and these all together constitute the Sapta Sindhu, Sapta Sindhu, Sapta Sindhu, and the region near it was known as Sapta Sindhu region, where the Aryans will later come, or this part itself, like this Veda and all. This is believed to have been framed by Aryans, who were people who migrated from the northern part, northern, I'd say Turkey, and Turkey is the place where people, like many people, believe that Aryans emerged from, and they came down to Indian terrain and they landed and settled there in the Saptasindhu region, possibly invading over the Harappan people, is what they say, but I find it very hard to believe. Well, it's possible. Well, anyway, moving on. So, a page from a manuscript of the Rig Veda. This manuscript of the Rig Veda on birch bark was found in Kashmir about 150 years ago. It was used to prepare one of the. You do remember this implication of birch, right? We did that in. I think it was the first. Yeah, it was the first chapter where we stated that manuscripts, they were written on palm leaves or on specially prepared bark of a tree known as specially prepared bark of a tree known as birch. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was hmm. So this was written. This is Rigved. It was written on birch bark, bark of that tree, right? And it was found in Kashmir about 150 years ago. Earliest printed texts of the Rig Veda as well as an English translation. It is now preserved in a library in Pune, Maharashtra. So it's there in some library in Pune, Maharashtra. Not really wanting to go into details of that. It's just a text, right? It's there in Pune, Maharashtra. Anyway, Vishwamitra and the river. So this is what that dialogues is. Just simply read it. Yes, Vishwamitra, oh rivers, come down from the mountains like two swift horses, like two shining cows that lick their calves. You move like chariots to the sea through the power of Indra. You are full of water and wish to unite with one another. The rivers, we who are full of water, move along the path the gods have made for us. Once we start flowing, we cannot be stopped. Why do you pray to us, O sage? Vishwamitra, O sisters, please listen to me. The singer who has come from a distance with his chariots and carts, let your waters not rise above our axles so that we can cross safely the rivers. We will listen to your prayers so that you can cross safely. Historians point out that this hymn was composed in the area where these rivers flow. They also suggest that the sage lived in a society where horses and cows were valued animals. This is an important takeaway of all the things that's written here. Oh my god, can't really even understand. People's belief, it's very easy to toy with people's beliefs, or what could be or what could not be. It's a completely different topic, so let's not deviate and just get on with the takeaways here. The important thing is the fact that horses and cows were valued animals, and the fact that they were used, chariots, like it's mentioned here, right? So things like chariots and stuff like that wasn't really a thing which was not known. It was there, it was valued, and horse and cows were valued stuff, valued things. Things, no, valued beings, valued animals. Yes, this is why the rivers are compared to horses and cows. So do you think chariots were also important? Obviously it was, otherwise he wouldn't ask the river to just flow down, right? Yeah, give reason for your answer. Yeah, but we can't write that as an answer. Or could we? I mean, chariots were an important thing. Okay, now we can't write that Vishwamitra asked the river to slow down just because he wanted the chariot to pass through the river. Okay, whatever it is, like, okay, if it's for class 6 children, probably an answer like that would just chal jayega. Well, if you asked me whether chariots were important, obviously it was, because it was a means of transport for the people, for the kings. Not just for the kings, even I think if Vishwamitra was using, he was a sage, right? So if sages and people like that were using chariots, now imagine what about the fact if he didn't have a chariot, if there was no horses or cows, they got swept away by the river, then obviously he'll have to walk all the way to wherever he is wanting to go. We can't cut through the river. Now that's also another thing, right? So if the chariots were large enough, then they can travel through quite a deep part of the river as well without getting swept away. So maybe it was a means through which they could cut through rivers as well, other than traveling the whole, what do you say, like going the extra distance to find the area where it is narrower and then cross easily through there. So it could be valuable in those ways because it makes the transport much more easier, is what I think. Yeah, anyway, let's just move on. Too much time spent there. Really, it really doesn't need. Read the verses and find out what are the modes of transport that are mentioned. Moving on. Other rivers, especially the Indus and its other tributaries, and the Saraswati are also named in the hymns. I'm pretty sure Saraswati River doesn't really exist as of now, or it does probably, but it isn't as big as it used to be. Oh no, it's quite a big river. Let's see it in the map. Was I wrong? I could have been, I know. So this is it isn't really clear. Let me see something else. Wow, way to make it very small. is this? What is this? Oh, now we have diverted to some other stuff. Oh, well, this looked good. Ah, there we go. Saraswati is a bigger part of which Satluj Beas is forming from Indus itself. I think, yeah, it's Indus itself. Indus main river, Jhelum Sea. Indus main river. Saraswati is a um, different one, but no, something somewhere. I think these two connect here, and yeah, these two have to be, man. These two have to be. As far as I know, Sindhu, Saraswati, not these. Sindhu, Saraswati, Satluj, Beas River, Ravi, Chenab, and Jhelum form together the seven. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sapt Sindhu, all forming part of the same tributary. These are all tributaries of the Indus River, is what I have studied. I cannot be wrong in this thing. But the fact that Saraswati exists, I thought Saraswati didn't exist no more. So I am wrong. Saraswati does exist. I thought it was gone, like it chala gaya tha. Anyway, so I'm wrong. Saraswati does exist even today, and I wasn't knowing that. I mean, I'm not from that part, so I don't have a lot of idea about it. Yeah, it still looks very good. It looks pretty good. Is it really? I mean, it's not written it's Saraswati, but where is the Saraswati? See, yeah, this gives a better. Let me pose a better question here. Does Saraswati exist? I mean, where am I searching? Bing. Wait a minute. I can think of a better place here. It begins in the Aravalli mountain ranges in Rajasthan before submerging in the run of Kutch. Tributary of Alaknanda river originates near Badrinath. This is what we should be finding out. Bringing back the ancient Saraswati. Let's see what this is. Ancient river Saraswati, considered to be one of the holy rivers of the India, has been on the agenda of BJP with elections for 90 seats of Haryana. Legislative Assembly now. Is considered the origin of river Saraswati in 2018. What is this? That disappeared thousands of years ago. See? Efforts are being made to revive Saraswati river that disappeared thousands of years ago. So it disappeared. Saraswati Udgama Sthal Kund Adi Badri. Yeah. So this is where Saraswati doesn't really exist as of now. What I had known and is what the situation is right now as well. Okay. Where have we been? Yeah. So other rivers, especially the Indus and its other tributaries and the Saraswati, are also named in the hymns. Ganga, Ganga and Yamuna are named only once. So Ganga and Yamuna are named, but they are named only once. Cattle, horses, and chariots. There are many prayers in the Rig Veda for cattle, children, especially sons, and horses. So there are many prayers for cattle, children, especially son, and for horses. Horses were yoked to chariots that were used in battles, which were fought to capture cattle. Oh. So people would fight for capturing cattle. Way to go, bro. I mean, yeah, fine. That was the time, no? Cattle were important things. So, I mean, isn't it odd for a person to even decide, like, I'll capture someone else's stuff? Yeah, but where is reasoning at that point of time anyway? It looks wrong to us, it might not have been wrong for them. Anyway, battles were also fought for land. So, battles were fought for various reasons. One is to capture cattle, one is for taking land, acquiring land, important for pasture and for growing hardy crops that ripen quickly, like barley. Some battles were fought for water and to capture people. For okay, slavery and related stuff probably. So why were battles being fought at that period of time? Only explanations are to capture cattle, to capture land, to capture people, and to get water. These are the four reasons which they have discussed. Could be many more. Like now, once that has been done, revenge ke liye fir aa jayenge. So there's a lot of other possibilities for battles to occur and things like that. Since there isn't one particular person who is administering all of the system and it's anyone's land, so things like this can happen. Some of the wealth that was obtained was kept by the leaders, some was given to the priest. Now, to keep the people happy, you do something like that. After taking a lot, you give some to the people who are close by, right? So, some wealth was obtained was kept by the leaders themselves, and some was given to the priests, and the rest was distributed amongst the people. Some wealth was used for the performance of yajnas or sacrifices in which offerings were made into the fire. These were meant for gods. Now you would make the gods also happy by giving them the sacrifices. So gods and goddesses received a share from the battle. Leaders would keep a little bit. Priests would be given some, and offerings में gods and goddesses को भी दिया जा रहा है. Offerings could include ghee, grain, and in some cases even a whole animal as such. So these are the things that would be offered in the fire: ghee, grain, and animals themselves. Ghee, grain, and animal, right? Most men took part in these wars. There was no regular army, but there were assemblies where people met and discussed matters of war and peace. They also chose leaders who were often brave and skillful warriors. Now, we discussed about this in the last chapter also, where I stated that the way rulers are found in those period of time wasn't on the basis of heredity. It was on the basis of those people who had the skills to lead, who had the ability to lead the group, lead the a battalion into war and be successful or getting victory, right? So they chose those leaders in that way. It wasn't based on heredity. So assemblies were there where people would meet and discuss the matters of war, like is written here. Okay, right. So words to describe people. There are several ways of describing people. In terms of work they do, the language they speak, the place they belong to, their family, their communities, and cultural practices. So these are the various ways in which you can classify people or describe people. So yeah. Let us see some of the words used to describe people found in the Rig Veda. There are two groups who are described in terms of their work: the priests, sometimes called Brahmins, and all of these people perform the rituals, and also we have Rajas. And we have Rajas. So Brahmins and Rajas are the two different type of people which the Rig Veda describes on the basis of their work. Brahmins, those who perform the rituals, and Rajas, those who would rule, but they did not have capital cities, palaces, or armies, nor did they collect tax. Sons did not automatically succeed fathers as Rajas. So, the most important takeaway here is that uh, these Rajas, they didn't have capital cities, they didn't have palaces or armies, and they did not collect tax. You can simply say that they were like rulers without a kingdom as such, without an empire or a kingdom as such. Nothing like that. They were just rulers, they lived in normal houses, but they were the one who would lead them. Yes, they were the ones who would lead them. They didn't have an army, they didn't have a palace, they didn't even used to collect tax, but they were the ones who were the representative or the people who would lead the whole community towards a direction. So, though that would be the Raja, and then we have Brahmins who would perform the rituals and things like that, priestly people. So Rigved describes these two people in terms of their work. Read the previous section once more and see whether you can find out what the Rajas did. We discussed that. Two words were used to describe the people or the community as a whole. One was the word jana, which we still use in Hindi, and other comes and other languages, in Hindi and other languages. Right? Okay, cool. Community as a whole was known as Jan, and it could also be Vish. The word Vaishya comes from Vish. Vaishya comes from the word Vish. So community as a whole could be termed as Jan, or it could be termed as Vish or Vaishya, which comes from the word Vish. You'll learn more about this in chapter 5. Several Vish or Jan are mentioned by name. So we find references to the Puru Jana or Vish, the Bharat Jana or Vish, the Yadu Jana or Vish, and so on. No. Do any of these names sound familiar? No. Not for me, I don't know. I think we'll be dealing with these in the forthcoming sections. So let's just keep this thing in our mind. Yes, I haven't come across it yet. So, Purujana, Bharatjan, Yadujan. Puru, Bharat, and Yadujan. Sometimes the people who composed the hymns described themselves as Aryans. See, so it's stated that these people who, as Aryas, not Aryans, no, it wouldn't let me, right? Described as Aryas and called their opponents Dasas or Dasyas, Dasyas or Dasus. Dasis, I think it's Dasis, Dasas and Dasis. These were people who did not perform sacrifices and probably spoke different languages. So people who didn't perform sacrifices and who spoke different languages were all dasas and dasis. Later, the term Dasa and the female Dasi came to mean slaves. Yeah, so obviously these are the type of people who would later be like racist, who would think that they are the superior class and the others who do not perform sacrifices and who do not speak the same language are inferior to them. But the seeds of racist characters emerging. I will see that in future also. Anyway, slaves were women and men who were often captured in war. They were treated as the property of their owners, who could make them do whatever work they wanted. While the Rig Veda was being composed in the northwest of the subcontinent, there were other developments elsewhere. Let us look at some of these. Silent Sentinels, the story of the megaliths. Look at the illustration on the next page. The stone boulders are known as megaliths, literally big stones. Megaliths, big stones. These were carefully arranged by people and were used to mark the burial sites. So, this is quite important. Marking burial sites in that period of time. Yeah, we can, yeah, or we can gradually reduce. At that, yeah, we can say like at that period of time, it was quite an old period of time, but it isn't as old as the Indus civilization now. It's at least 1500 to 1000 or maybe 500 BC. So not as old as the Indus Valley civilization. So these were carefully arranged by people and were used to mark burial sites. The practice of erecting megaliths began about 3000 years ago. See, so this is the Vedic period, 3000 years ago, and was prevalent throughout the Deccan, South India, in the northeast, and the Kashmir. So, Deccan is basically now present time Hyderabad and regions related Telangana and Andhra Pradesh would be Deccan. With the Deccan region, maybe I think even Karnataka's middle, like the rightmost parts of Karnataka would also fall under this term Deccan, right? And South India, so the whole of these parts, and even Northeast, South India, Northeast, and we have Kashmir. So these are the places where megaliths have been found, where people would, after dying, they would be buried and be marked with boulders and stones to mark their burial sites. Right, and this practice, matlab, the oldest which they could have found till now was 3000 years old. Was 3000 years old. That's why they have come up with this figure. It could have been a little older than that. I mean, but that is still not discovered so far, so we don't know. Right. So some important megalithic sites are shown on map 2. Now this is a site. Say like this really looks quite grand for a person who died. Some important megalithic sites are shown on map 2, page 13. Oh, the old one. No, we're not going there now. While some megaliths can be seen on the surface, other megalithic burials are often underground. So, megalithic sites could be found on the surface itself, or it could be found underneath also. So both of these are possible. We never really know where to find one. Sometimes archaeologists find a circle of stone boulders or a single large stone standing on the ground. These are the only indications that there are burials beneath. Yeah. Okay, there's a minor detail here which we missed. So this type of megalith is known as cyst. Some cysts, like the one shown here, have portholes which could be used as an entrance. Okay, have portholes. I'm not exactly sure what in this whole thing is the porthole, but it seems that there is a porthole through which an entrance through which an entrance can be made. It's there somewhere in this. Anyway, let's just move on. Sometimes, so that are the only indications. The only indications are stones lying around and stones standing on the ground. There were several things that people did to make megaliths. We have made a list here, try and arrange them in the correct order. Digging pits in the earth, transporting stones, breaking boulders, placing stones in the position, finding suitable stones, shaping stones, burying the dead. What would come first? I think that burying the dead would come first. You bury the dead first and then you place the stones. Yeah, but then you'll have to find the stones as well. So, very subjective. Depends. Now, so we dig the pit in the earth, we bury the dead. So that task is done. Now, now we move towards the placing of the stones. So we'll have to find the stones first. So you finding suitable stones will come first, and then you will have to break. No, you'll have to break the boulders first, then find the suitable stones from them, and then you shape the stones, and then you place the stones in the position that you want to place it over the this finished product of digging the pit and burying the dead. Yeah, so I think we have an idea here. So we dig the pit, we bury the dead, we break the boulders, we find the suitable stones, we shape them, and we place them. Oh, and we have to transport them also. So we break the boulders, we find the suitable stones, we transport the stones, and then, no, we break the boulders, find the suitable stones, shape the stones, and then transport the stones and place them in the position that we want. It could be subjective. I mean, if I was to do it, I would do it this way. Or maybe I would not bury the dead and first do all the things related to transporting and getting the stones in one place, getting all the ingredients ready, and then mixing the masala, like mixing everything together. Either way, the whole thing is that it should look like the picture here. Right. All these burials have some common features. Generally, the dead were buried with distinctive pots, which are called black and red ware. So, dead people were found with black and red ware pots, okay, and also found are, and we also find this is really very frustrating. I might have to change the um, software that I'm using for this purpose. See, annoying, really. This didn't happen when I was using it earlier. So, tools, weapons, and iron tools and weapons of iron was also found, and sometimes skeletons of horses and horse equipments could also be seen. So these are the things which so people believed in the afterlife in that time also. Like these people also, I mean, Aryans and people who believed in the Vedas or wrote or composed the Vedas, and these people, they also had a similar understanding about an afterlife like that in like that practiced in Egypt, probably because they were found the coffins were found with these things, probably for purposes that would be needed for them in the afterlife. There's no other, or it could be that the thing belonged to that person, so it's best if the person has it with him all the time. That could also be an explanation, not necessarily delving into the fact that they believed in an afterlife. Ornaments of stone and gold was also found. See, so it's not completely based on utility. It could have been something that belongs to them and they didn't want to keep that part of the person with the living. So it's best if it's kept with the person who died. Something like that. Was iron used in Harappan cities? No, not until not until the Aryans arrived. No, iron equipment found from megalithic burials, left top horse equipment. Yeah, the foot. What do they call? Foot pegs, I think. Yeah, that thing. Left below axis, below a dagger. So what's important is that now people are discovering the uses with iron. They discovered iron and they found that it's quite a good stuff to use, especially when it comes to weapons. Much better than copper and bronze. Finding out about social differences, archaeologists think that objects found with a skeleton probably belong to the dead person. Sometimes more objects are found in one grave than in another. Find Brahmagiri on map 2, page 13. Let it be. Here, one skeleton was buried with 33 gold beads, 2 stone beads, 4 copper bangles, and 1 conch shell. Other skeletons have only a few pots. So these finds suggest that there was some difference in status amongst the people who were buried. Some were rich, others were poor, some were chiefs, and others were followers. So there's these differences in the coffins which portray that there was a system of status. Like there was this thing about status that was prevalent at that period of time. Otherwise, it would have been the same structure for almost everyone with not much of a difference in the burial sites. So the concept of a rich and concept of a poor was there was there even at that period of time 4700 years ago. Were some burial spots meant for certain families? Sometimes megaliths contain more than one skeleton. These indicate that people, perhaps belonging to the same family, were buried in the same place, though not at the same time. The bodies of those who died later were brought into the grave through the portholes. Oh, okay, now some clarity here. So these the reason why these portholes are in place is because if someone of the same family dies later, then they can be introduced into the same hole through the portholes. Right. Stone circles or boulders placed on the surface probably served as signposts to find the burial site so that even people could return to the same place whenever they wanted to. So that people could return to the same place whenever they wanted to. So the stone circles and so stone circles and boulders placed on the surface served as signposts. Please, yes. Stone circles or boulders placed on the surface probably served as signposts to find the burial site, and people could return to that place whenever, if ever they wanted to. A special burial at Inamgaon. Find Inamgaon on map 2. So many references to map 2. It is a site on the river God. River God. God, God, River God, a tributary of the Bhima. Bhima, right? Okay. So tributary of River Bhima, God. It was occupied between 3600 and 2700 years ago. Here, adults were generally buried in the ground, laid out straight with the head towards the north. Sometimes burials were within the houses. Vessels that probably contained food and water were placed with the dead. Okay. So the people, at least in this part of the region, believed in an afterlife where they thought they could take things with them into the afterlife. One man was found buried in a large four-legged clay jar in the courtyard of a five-roomed house, one of the largest houses at the site in the center of the settlement. This house also had a granary. The body was placed in a cross-legged position, very uncomfortable position to stay dead in. They believed in an afterlife, and they inside a clay pot in cross-legged position for so many years. What a way to go. Anyway, do you think this was the body of a chief? Give reasons for your answer. Why? Because, yeah, it's in the center of the settlement, and if it's a big house, I'm pretty sure it was that of a person with a wealthy status and all, right? In the center of the settlement. And there was a granary also. Granary usually in a house is not really the kind of thing which you would expect at that period of time. A granary usually used to be the whole of the um, for the whole of the city or for the citizen, right? Now, if this thing existed in the house itself, then it could mean that the person really was something of a prominent character. Could have been the body of a chief, yes. What skeleton studies tell us? It is easy to make out the skeleton of a child from its small size. However, there are no major differences in the bones of a girl and a boy. Can we make out whether a skeleton was that of a man or a woman? Sometimes people decide on the basis of what is found with the skeleton. For instance, if a skeleton is found with jewelry, it is sometimes thought to be that of a woman. However, there are problems with this. Often men also wore ornaments. A better way of figuring out the sex of a skeleton is to look at the bone structure. The hip or the pelvic area of women is generally larger to enable childbearing. This is the scientific way of identifying whether the person who died was a female or a male, and it still is the way in which most of the times things are determined. So hip or the pelvic area of the women is generally larger in order to enable childbirth. So it's compared to that of a male bone structure, it would be narrower. In males, it is narrower. In females, it is broader. Right. So these distinctions are based on modern skeletal studies. About 2000 years ago, there was a famous physician named Charaka who wrote a book on medicine known as the Charaka Samhita. There he states that the human body has 360 bones. This is a much larger number than the 200 bones that are recognized in modern anatomy. Charaka arrived at this figure by counting the teeth, joints, and cartilage. So two different numbers. One, according to Charaka Samhita, is 360 bones, according to Charaka Samhita, and according to modern anatomy, it's 200. Charaka even counted the teeth, um, joints, and also cartilages to arrive at this number of 360. So, how do you think he found out about the human body in such great detail? Yeah, well, it could go dark, so let's not discuss about it. Probably he killed someone and then, oh, I don't want to think about it, I mean, somebody died, he just borrowed the body to study the number of bones. A lot of speculations here. Anyway, let's just move on. Occupations at Inamgaon. Archaeologists have found seeds of wheat, barley, rice, pulses, millets, peas, and sesame. What's new here? Wheat and barley we've been seeing a lot. Sesame we've been seeing a lot. Pulses, millets, peas. I think these are new, or I haven't seen them in the earlier chapters probably. Or I might have seen them, might be forgetting. But anyway, these aren't something which are common. Wheat and barley, rice and all, and sesame we had seen it earlier also, but pulses, millets, and peas. Okay, bones of a number of animals, many bearing cut marks that show they have been used as food, have also been found. These include cattle, buffalo, goat, sheep, dog, horse, ass, pig, sambar, spotted deer, black buck, antelope, hare, and mongoose, besides birds, crocodile, turtle, crab, and fish. There is evidence that fruits such as bear, amla, jamun, dates, and a variety of berries were collected. So people ate all kinds of things, and there wasn't this thing that there wasn't anything like you should not eat anything. So people would eat anything in case the need arises. So a lot of stuff: cattle, buffalo, goat, sheep, dog, horse, ass, pig, sambar. All of these things were eaten, no problem. Use this evidence to list the possible occupations of the people at Nagaon. Use this evidence to list the possible occupations of the people at Nagaon. What is this? This evidence. What evidence? This evidence. Occupations at Nagaon. Okay. So what they're trying to want us to figure out is the fact that what people there in Anamgaon used to do. I'd say many of them were farmers, and other than that, they, I think were butchers, and also people who would collect fruits. But there could be so many other people also having so many different occupations as well, like craftspeople or scribes or people who, or sages and rulers as well. So these people would also be there along with this group. So this isn't, we can't say that this is the only occupation that the people there had. We can, the list cannot be exhaustive. There are so many different things that people there could have been doing. Based on these evidences, butchers and farmers. Yeah, with yeah, that's what we can figure out. Anyway, find China in your atlas. Now, around 3,500 years ago, we find some of the first evidence of writing in China. 3,500 years ago, writings in China. Okay, so these writings were on animal bones. Way to go! These people figured out writing on animal bones as the alternative. They could have written on stones instead of bones. I mean, yeah, but bone would look much better. It would be more. The surface is, yeah, we also do have white stones. Not really hard to find. Anyway, these writings were on animal bones. These are called oracle bones. These are called oracle bones because they were used to predict the future. Yeah, anytime you hear the word oracle, you know it has to do something with the future. Kings got scribes to write questions on the bones. Would they win battles? Would the harvest be good? Would they have sons? The bones were then put into the fire and they cracked because of the heat. Then fortune tellers studied these cracks and tried to predict the future. As you may expect, they sometimes made mistakes. These kings lived in palaces in cities. They amassed vast quantities of wealth, including large, elaborately decorated bronze vessels. However, they did not know the use of iron. So, even these people, even 3,000, so we can say for sure, like 3,500 years ago. Yeah, but this was also found in 3,005, like this was 3,500 years ago, right? 3,000 years ago. So iron was first discovered by the Aryans, and people back in China at the same time didn't know the use of iron. That's why they say here. However, they did not know the use of iron. So Chinese didn't know the use of iron before us. It was it was the Aryans who knew the use of iron, and then Chinese people probably. understood its use. This is very hard, really. Did not you know the use of iron. But what's different? 3500 years ago, in India, there was still nothing like a heredity of kings, kings succeeding to the throne because of heredity. It was on the basis of a person's skill and capacity. While in China, there was the concept of kings. It's the same when we go to Egypt also. Kings lived in palaces and cities, amassed vast quantities of wealth. Hmm, nice. List one difference between Raja of the Rigveda and these kings. So that's what I was saying. You know what else could be the difference? Yeah, so these kings in China used to live in had palaces, had yeah, that's also another thing, right? I don't know about taxes, but I'm pretty sure they lived in palaces. They were. Let's go there once more, one more time. Or armies, they didn't collect any tax. These kings had capital cities also. The kings who were there in China had capital cities also under them, as compared to the Rajas of the Rigveda who didn't have those things. You live in Inamgaon 3000 years ago, and the chief has died last night. Today, your parents are preparing for the burial. Describe the scene, including how food is being prepared for the funeral. I can't tell much about the food. Well, if it's a chief who has died, then probably the food would be placed inside the person's coffin as well for his afterlife munching. Could be. But rest assured, like I think we should just take a look back into the Inamgaon part just to see what exactly is it about that place. We did it in the second chapter in Amgaon. Let's just look at the map once. Early village is what is marked as in Amgaon. Early village. Oh, is there any other early village? None. Has something been written about in Amgaon here? I think I did read something here about in Amgaon. What it is? In Amgaon, in Amgaon, in Amgaon. And what about pulses? Green word is used. Pulses, millets, peas. Can't see any of these here. Fishing became important. Rice, wheat, lentils. Red and black ware. Yeah, so nothing really is mentioned here about Inamgaon, but it's there in the map. So let's look at the map once more. So Inamgaon, I don't know, probably present day Karnataka. Yeah, present day Karnataka is where Inamgaon is. What else is there in this? Mehergarh was also referred. It's here. top, west. Yeah, so I think we are done with this chapter, and I think we can wrap it here. 1 hour, 10 minutes. I can't help it, there are just so many things inside the book when we start reading that we just can't ignore. That's the thing. It's good to do, it's good to have a comprehensive understanding of the chapter because you get to learn a lot of things. Now, we saw so many different things in this. This was an introduction to the Vedic period, actually. That's what this was, really. So many things that we had learned in this chapter now. Anyway, so let's end this chapter here and I'll begin with the next chapter.